So I really enjoyed this one. Aemond is being a psycho again. Seasmoke is racist against white people. Rhaenyra made out with a lady. We got several sentences on Darren. Alice Rivers held an owl. So many things I loved. This is another episode where the season being cut by 2 episodes and filmed during the writer's strike can really be felt. Once again, there are scenes that feel cut short and not given enough time to breathe. They turn the fire off just as they get cooking. This was another character-focused episode, and it featured 3 sets of brothers, and I'm going to go through them from most functional to least. Starting off with what appears to be a very functional relationship in Alyn and Addam of Hull. They may not have the support of their father, but it seems that they have the support of each other. Corlys has never recognized either one of them publicly as his sons. Alyn shaves his head to hide his silver hair because he doesn't want people to know. It does seem that Corlys holds Alyn in regard, especially now that he saved his life, and it cannot be lost on Alyn that Corlys is looking for a new heir and all of a sudden paying more attention to him. But when Corlys offers to make him his new first mate, he is reluctant to accept and only acquiesces once it's made clear that it is in order and not a request. The relationship between Westerosi noble bastards and their fathers is often complicated or non-existent. Dorne is different, but Dorne has an entirely separate culture and is not part of the Seven Kingdoms at this point in history. In Westeros, bastards are almost never treated the same as true-born children. Ned bringing Jon into his home and publicly acknowledging him as his son was the exception and not the rule. And we saw the trouble that led to with Catelyn. Most noblewomen would object in the same way she did. Bastards are usually kept away in large part because it is an insult to the lady of the house, not to mention the succession issues that can arise if they are legitimized. Now that Rhaenys has died after basically giving her blessing to Alyn, Corlys feels more comfortable in grooming him as a successor, but Alyn has not forgotten that his father has never treated him like a son before. And we hear in this episode that Addam has been even more neglected by their father, perhaps in part because he is a shipwright, not a sailor, so he has not had opportunity to spend time with him. That seems a bit unclear. Corlys probably sees more of himself in Alyn, but it is Addam who shares his ambition and who now has the opportunity for the greatness he dreamed about, with Seasmoke choosing him. Addam is a Disney princess. He sings his I Want song.
To serve with a sea snake is to make your fortune. Had I such a chance, I would leap at it.
Do you never think about what could be ours?
Or yours, anyway.
The riches, servants, the driftwood throne.
And then he is chosen by a handsome prince for a magical destiny. And Seasmoke ties into Addam and Alyn's half-brother Laenor. It can't be a coincidence that Seasmoke sought out the half-brother of his previous writer. I guess it's possible that he just saw Addam and was like, oh my god, you're so pretty, hi. But he almost certainly selected Addam in part due to his relation to Laenor. Laenor running away and not actually dying was a huge knot in the story. I don't know if they can fully untie unless he dies off screen. Also, abandoning Seasmoke like that was just so sad. He was alone for years, but probably unable to bond with another writer. According to established dragon lore, a dragon can have only one rider at a time, and that bond lasts for life. So it's very possible that Laenor has died off screen, and that is the reason Seasmoke has been restless and sought out Addam. Or maybe the lore is wrong. Maybe if you abandon your dragon, the bond will eventually weaken with enough space and time, and maybe the dragon can then choose to break it themselves and seek out a new rider. I don't know if we'll ever get confirmation on what happened here. But the implications of Seasmoke seeking out a close blood relation of Laenor's, but not a Targaryen one, are fascinating. I guess we don't know for sure. Corlys could have a small amount of Targaryen blood, or their mother could as well, but it is less likely to find a dragon seed on Driftmark. I'm not a Targaryen supremacy person. I am generally team you do not need Targaryen blood to claim a dragon. But it also indicates that dragons can sense bloodlines somehow, and they are important to them. This could be part of the reason behind Targaryen incest. If a half Targaryen claims a dragon, then maybe other people in that bloodline who aren't Targaryens would at least have a shot of claiming the dragon later. Obviously, dragon's preference, etc., still matters. Seasmoke did choose Addam and not Alyn. I loved that it was Seasmoke claiming Addam and not the other way around. We have heard that dragons are intelligent beings with their own agency, and we have seen some of that, but never quite like this. And Seasmoke seems like such a fun guy. I love how much character they gave him. I love how he flies in this kind of jaunty, swaying way. He really is like a giant puppy who just wants to play. He ate too much barbecue earlier and now he's feeling restless. I will maintain that I think Viserys the First is the central villain of this story. Yeah, he's not outwardly villainous and cruel the way that someone like Aemond is, but he is ultimately the person most responsible for this entire mess due to his indecision, conflict avoidance, and naivete. It remains to be seen if the show will actually acknowledge this. People are still talking about him as this great man and great king. Maybe the people closest to him can't see how he screwed them over yet, and he is a fantastic character. I feel for him in spite of my dislike for his actions because he is a tragic figure who never wanted the crown. His walk down the throne room in the 8th episode of the first season made me cry. And the main reason audiences saw him so favorably is because Paddy Considine was so incredible. He might be my favorite performance from either show, and he was robbed by every award granting organization, and I am still mad about that. The Daemon Viserys relationship was one of my favorites in season 1. You could tell there was so much love there despite everything. It was incredible to see him back in this episode. I am guessing this is the end of the Daemon dream arc. Now that he got his moment of catharsis with his brother, you could see how broken he was, seeing his brother in that state towards the end of his life. Daemon picking up Viserys' crown and helping him climb those last steps was maybe the best moment of the first season. That love was the most redeeming part of Daemon's character for me. Viserys was always the person Daemon loved most in the world, and being needed by him was Daemon's core drive. More than power or the crown, Daemon wanted to be valued by his brother. He also wanted power and maybe the crown. Daemon's first dream is a memory of the scene in the throne room from the first episode, and much of Viserys' dialogue from that scene is repeated.
Did you say it? The heir for a day. Did you say it?
Did you say it?
The heir for a day. Did you say it?
Daemon cannot bear to be trapped in this moment. He pounds on the door, he gets to his knees, and he begs the doors to open. This moment in the aftermath of Emma's death with the Heir for a Day incident was the breaking point of their relationship, and it was the end of Daemon's hopes of inheriting the throne from his brother. His second dream is something that clearly never really happened. Daemon finds Viserys standing vigil over Emma's body, and he comforts his brother and holds him as he weeps. In the end, Daemon's biggest regret wasn't being disowned, it was not being there for his brother when he was truly needed and furthering his suffering at a time of grief. This is a beautiful and quiet moment of catharsis for this character. Matt Smith has just been phenomenal this entire season. I love the Harrenhal plotline and what they're doing with this character, but even if I didn't, it would be worthwhile just to get this performance out of him. Absolutely incredible stuff. I still don't buy the light and dark in equal measure descriptor for Daemon. He's still straightforwardly a bad person. I don't think you can actually like Daemon Targaryen if you don't also kind of hate him, but this plotline has done so much for his character. I'm not sure you can actually like Daemon Targaryen if you don't also kind of hate him, but this plotline has done so much for his character. I said this last week, but I think there's a very plausible reading here that Daemon was in love with his brother. I am a bisexual Daemon truther in general, but I think him being in love with Viserys specifically matches with the heartbreak he displays when his brother sends him away. His relationship with Rhaenyra is an attempt to seek out what he was denied by Viserys, both emotionally and as his heir. All he ever wanted was to be by his side. His feelings for Viserys exist on a different plane from the rest of the people in his life, even Rhaenyra. It's the truest love he has. I don't think Daemon would have ever consciously acknowledged these feelings, and I don't think Viserys was in love with Daemon, but it would make a lot of sense. This is just my headcanon, but also this episode validated some of my gay projection because it was not just gay projection. Those bitches were actually super gay for each other. And deliberately contrasted to Daemon and Viserys is Aemond and Aegon. There are strong parallels with Viserys and Aegon now. Aegon is lying in the same bed his father decayed in, with half of his face all busted, in constant pain, craving milk of the poppy. Tom Glencarney has put in such an incredible performance, lying in a bed, suffering and wheezing. He is able to transform his voice in the same way that Paddy Considine was at the end of the first season.
Nothing.
It's incredible. It is interesting that these characters have damage to opposite sides of their face. Aegon appears to have lost his eye on the same side that Aemond did, but the opposite side of Viserys. And it is very subtle, I'd understand if you hadn't picked up on this yet, but Aemond and Daemon have quite a few parallels. We saw how disturbed Daemon was seeing his brother in a horrible, incapacitated state, but Aemond does not seem so concerned. It is honestly so rich that Otto Hightower schemed for years to get Aegon on the throne because he hated Daemon, only to end up with another Daemon in charge. Man, I miss Otto so much. I hope he's doing okay. Despite his conflicts with Viserys, Daemon would never have done what Aemond did to his brother. I mean, maybe he would have if Viserys had been a terrible brother like Aegon. Their circumstances were different. But we get two very different examples of brotherly affection in this episode. Daemon is comforting his brother in a way he never really could, but Aemond is causing his brother pain in a way that only he can. Look, I've said it before, I love a psychotic blonde, and I'm really enjoying this era from Aemond. I was a Viserys III enjoyer. If you're pretty and unhinged and wearing a silver wig, I'm probably in. My stance on characters like this is usually, I enjoy your presence immensely, and also, someone should kill you. That's still my number one note to the blacks in this entire conflict. They really should have made a much better effort to assassinate Aemond when they had the chance. I've always loved that this show just has an anime character on it. I do think that there is a chance of taking this character too far in that direction and it becoming too camp, but it definitely hasn't got there. I have seen some complaints that this character has changed significantly from his season 1 portrayal, and I can understand some of that. Aemond had one of the strongest character arcs in season 1, but this season he has had one of the weakest, which is very disappointing to me as someone who loves this character. Ewan Mitchell has done fantastically with what he has been given. He just hasn't been given enough. This is a believable progression for the character, but we needed to see more of the fallout from Storm's End and from Blood and Cheese for him. We needed to see more of his journey to deciding to become the villain everyone sees him as, to wear cruelty and severity as his armor. And I don't think that this character has lost all of his humanity. He's suppressed it, but it's still there. and you can see that when Alicent touches his cheek. When he hurts Aegon, there is no indication he's deriving any sort of sadistic pleasure from it. He doesn't show any sympathy either. It's a different sort of pragmatic cruelty. There is a certain degree of surprise among supposed Aemond fans who now don't like him anymore that I find a bit confusing if they read the book. I am not going to spoil anything, but do you remember when he every at and made a pile of their in the courtyard? Yeah, probably some of those details are exaggerated, but there are many atrocities that this character commits that they will not be able to oopsie their way out of. Aemond was always going to take a very dark turn, and he's going to get even darker, and they needed to show that progression. And this is consistent with the patterns of behavior they set up in season 1. It's what often happens when someone is given near absolute power. It's a classic case of the bullied becoming a bully. Aemond has always had a huge ego and thought he was super special boy, and now everyone is treating him the way he thinks he deserves to be treated. Of course it's gonna go to his head. Of course he's gonna be more of a menace than ever. This episode saw Alicent reckoning with motherhood and the way her sons have turned out. Aemond no longer listens to her counsel and actively rebukes it in firing her. On one hand, respect your mother, you little twerp. But also, I can understand why a teenager wouldn't want his mom in the room when he's trying to be taken seriously as regent. And Alicent is not serving a purpose on the small council because most of the men do not regard her opinions, which is circular to be sure, but she's effectively already lost her voice. She is clinging on to the idea that she has power here. But the only power she ever had was as a proxy for men. It was never her own. This is a system that fundamentally disregards her as a player. Her own son thinks her more suited to domestic pursuits. Alicent is lost and unmoored. She is questioning her purpose and her decisions. In episode 9 of the first season, Rhaenys told Alicent that she didn't desire to be free, she just wanted a window in the walls of her prison. And I think this is true. Alicent never tried to change the corrupt system she operates in, but it is difficult to imagine what she could have done other than attempt to guide the men around her. She had no dragon and no royal blood. Her 2 eldest sons may be awful people, but they're still her children, and she still felt she had a duty to them. It's not that she didn't want to be free. She was unable to envision a way that she could be. In this episode, Alicent wonders how her sons turned out as monsters, and it both was and wasn't her fault. Alicent did do her best in the circumstances she was given, but she still damaged her sons in profound ways. Alicent had 4 children by the time she was 20. Her children were born for political reasons and conceived by marital rape. Viserys used her as a vessel for more heirs, and when he finally got the sons he always wanted, he ignored them. Aegon and Aemond grew up knowing they would never be favored by their father. Alicent was doing what she thought was best for her children, and she was never equipped to give them what they needed, but she was physically and emotionally abusive to Aegon. She allowed his bullying of Aemond to continue behind closed doors. This is a show about dragon wars, but it's also about generational trauma. In the very first episode of the show, when Otto first sends Alicent to Viserys' quarters, she talks about how after her mother died, all she wanted was for someone to say that they were sorry for what happened to her. The sorry she desired wasn't even a personal apology. It was a statement of empathy, a validation of her feelings. And it is tragic that she is unable to show either kind of compassion to her sons in a meaningful way. When she stood up for Aemond after he lost his eye, it was with violence. I don't know if she ever told him she was sorry. She will fight for her children. She will stand in between her son and a dragon, or her daughter and an angry mob, but she cannot offer them the comfort they really need. But in this episode, we hear her say that she's sorry to Aegon.
I'm sorry.
This is an apology on both fronts for what he has gone through and for the ways that she has failed him. She helped push him onto a throne he never wanted, and this happened at the hands of her other son, and I'm pretty sure she knows that. The sun is coming up in that scene. She sat by Aegon's bed all night. The scene between Alicent and Gwaine was lovely. Otto Hightower fucked up both of his children in different ways. Gwaine he abandoned, and Alicent he used as a political pawn. There is a lovely empathy from both of them, understanding how the other had it difficult. It is a healthy sibling interaction, which is exceedingly rare in the Red Keep as of late. They don't really know each other, and in a way that helps them both to open up. There is no baggage and no history in their way. This episode gave us multiple sentences on Daemon. He is kind and seemingly well-adjusted in a way his brothers could never be. There is a twofold sadness for Alicent of knowing she missed out on her child growing up, but also knowing he may be the better for it. Aegon gets 3 non-Maester visitors in this episode, and my favorite, maybe the best scene in the episode, was Larys. Matthew Needham has always been incredible. He is a fantastic monologuer, and this scene was masterful. Larys is manipulating Aegon. This is self-serving. If Aemond had not insulted him and treated him as subhuman...
My prince, it is an honor I'd never considered for myself.
Not to serve as hand, you toad.
If he had been more easily manipulable, Larys might not be here. But that doesn't mean he isn't speaking from the heart and trying to give real advice. Larys has been able to manipulate Aegon in the past by treating him as a competent person. And this time he doesn't have to lie about anything. Aemond is conspiring against him. He is in danger. And Larys does have some insight into what life will be like for Aegon from now on. That he will always be seen as lesser and pitied by those around him. Many of his lines are reminiscent of things Tyrion Lannister said in the main series.
Your mind is all that remains to you. Do not say that gladly. My lungs were strong, but my foot so twisted that my father named it sorcery, and they will underestimate you. And this will be your advantage.
Like Tyrion, Larys came into the world cursed in the eyes of his father. Lionel Strong seemed like a decent man, but here you can see some of why Larys wanted to kill him. Lionel saw his son as the product of inhuman sorcery. He made his distaste for his disability known. The person accused of sorcery could have been Alice Rivers. We may never know, but I would love if we learned more about that. When Alicent questions Maester Orwyle about Aegon's condition, she asks, what will he be if he lives, not who will he be? What happened to him has made him into something other than human in the eyes of others. Even the mother who loves him deeply despite everything. He will never be the same as he was before. His new reality is one of constant pain and pity. Aegon now has only his mind to protect him. That and his allies, and he can't exactly recruit them in this position. He has no choice but to ask Larys for help and trust that he will give it. In this episode, both Larys and Alice are asked for help by a desperate person.
I need help, Alice.
Daemon finally breaks down and admits that he has no idea what to do, and Alice does help him.
Our own healer, Alice Rivers, volunteered her renowned skills. She plied her craft, but there was not more to be done.
I honestly love their weird friendship.
You aren't going to bid me farewell?
There's something wrong with me.
It's so cute how she's slowly poisoning his mind. We see more evidence of Alice being a skin changer as she summons an owl. Now, this owl is a different owl from the owl seen in one of the stills they released before the episode. That owl was actually a barn owl. This owl is a tawny owl. I'm guessing they just shot with a couple different owls, but this may be a hint that Alicent has an entire owl army. At this point, I have to believe that there is some aspect of Alicent's magic that makes people completely disregard all the red flags.
Someone poisoned me.
She has basically been in a hot dog costume saying we're all trying to find the guy that did this the whole time, but Daemon doesn't suspect a thing of her. She's handing him a mysterious drink that looks like blood. She's saying so much stuff she has no business knowing about Viserys and Daemon's past, but he's not asking her how she knows that. She's just standing like this when Daemon walks into the courtyard. I think that is the same place that she was standing when we saw her in episode 3. It's always fun when supernatural stuff happens to people who don't believe in the supernatural.
Drivel! All of it! The ghosts, the curses, the blasted weirwood bed, I'm done with it!
That could be why he is reluctant to suspect witchcraft, because of his arrogance, but he suspects Sir Simon is up to something.
What are you playing at, old man?
I do wonder, Your Grace, if you're getting enough sleep.
Why not her?
There are older things in this world than you, or I, or living memory.
In this episode, Rhaenyra is finally letting loose. She was so reluctant to bring dragons into the war, but now she sees bringing more of them in as her only way to win. Daemon mentions in this episode that Rhaenyra never wanted the crown, but this isn't true. We heard in episode 8 of the first season that she thought she wanted it, but was questioning if the burden was too heavy. Sometimes being denied something makes you want it more. Rhaenyra has already lost so much. Her son, her unborn daughter, her only female mentor, her former best friend. There is a sunk cost fallacy. She has to believe that it meant something. In the Inside the Episode, Emma Darcy discussed how Rhaenyra has been embracing fanaticism. She has become convinced of the righteousness of her claim and determined to go to extreme lengths to win. I have some Daenerys-induced Dragon Queen PTSD about how they're going to handle Rhaenyra's arc, but I think I like where they're going with it so far. Rhaenyra is stuck in the same bind as most female leaders in patriarchal societies. The symbols and the trappings of power are masculine, so you have to adopt them to be taken seriously, but there is also a stigma against women who behave in masculine ways. The same behaviors that are seen as positive in a man will be seen as unbecoming in a woman. And much like Alicent, the men around Rhaenyra see her as a woman before they see her as a leader. This episode highlights another failure on Viserys' part to prepare Rhaenyra to rule. She should have been taught to fight and taught about martial strategy. It honestly seems odd to me that Rhaenyra never sought to train with the sword herself, with the way she idolized Visenya, but her father was never a warrior either, and she sought to emulate his rule. Unlike Aegon or Aemond, Rhaenyra does listen to counsel, but she has been growing tired of being questioned at every turn, and when Lord Celtigar chases her down in the hall, she loses it and slaps him in the face.
His numbers were few, but we may yet retake...
It is my fault, I think, that you have forgotten to fear me.
This is a culmination of weeks of being talked down to by her council. She is starting to realize that she needs to be feared to be taken seriously by men. And this episode finds Rhaenyra questioning what her life would be like if she were a man, if she were Daemon. Both of them long for what the other had. Rhaenyra is lonely both politically and emotionally, and Mysaria gives Rhaenyra validation that this isn't all for nothing, that she should be queen. Both of them are able to be vulnerable with each other in a way they aren't with other people. Rhaenyra and Mysaria may have bonded over a shared history with Daemon, but their kiss wasn't really about him. It arose from a shared attraction and a desire for intimacy. Maybe for some people this came out of left field. I clocked sexual tension between them from the start. It is hinted that Rhaenyra is queer in the book. There were theories that she might have had a relationship with Laena as well as Mysaria. Rhaenyra has always been someone who was not afraid to go against societal norms. She has followed her heart and she has valued her own desires and sought out her own pleasure. This is a war, and no one knows how much time they have left. There is a question of Mysaria's intentions and true loyalties. Some of her aligning with Rhaenyra has been out of self-interest, but that doesn't mean her feelings are not genuine. Compare it to the scene with Larys and Aegon earlier. Sonoya Mizuno has said in interviews that Mysaria's attraction to Rhaenyra is genuine. I am very interested to see where this goes, not just because I love gay stuff and mess, but the Mysaria-Rhaenyra relationship is a very interesting one in the books that histories were very likely to misunderstand. Before they get to making out, Mysaria and Rhaenyra launch a plan to get the Smallfolk of King's Landing to revolt against the Greens. Obviously, people eating is better than people starving, but I wouldn't give Rhaenyra too much humanitarian credit for this. It is her blockade that was starving them in the first place, and she only sends aid when she sees a way that it could benefit her. She knows the riots will lead to violence and many citizens of King's Landing will be hurt themselves. It's better than inciting riots and no one gets fed, but she is not doing this out of the kindness of her heart and the love for her people. A lot of the scenes with the Smallfolk have felt a bit generic. I think it is because their introductions have to be brief and cover specific plot points. They should get more characterization later. I think bringing Diana back into the story was a great choice. If you don't remember, Diana was the servant that Aegon sexually assaulted back in episode 8 of the first season. She now works at the tavern that Ulf frequents. She has good reason to oppose the Greens. The consequences of Aegon's misdoings are coming back to him. It seems like the palace is trying to keep Aegon's condition private. People have to know something because Aemond is Prince Regent now, but I would love for Diana to find out that Aegon got barbecued. Diana would also be someone who is known to Mysaria because Talia, Alicent's former handmaid, was an agent of Mysaria, and she was the one who brought Diana the moon tea, so it all tracks. And involving Sylvie makes sense because Mysaria would have connections among the sex workers of King's Landing. Sylvie was also treated very poorly by Aemond. Ultimately, he was a client and she has no reason to feel any loyalty to him. If anything, she would understand how dangerous he can be. It was very funny to hear her talk about Aemond throwing lavish parties, because she knows quite well that's the last thing he would do. Who would he invite? His only human friend was cristoncole, and he sent him away to war, and vhagar can't fit inside the castle. And I do always enjoy when actors have to be bad at acting. Diana reacts to news of Aemond's alleged revelries with surprise.
Feasting and merriment for the new Prince Regent.
And Aemond was acting so correct.
But this reaction makes no sense. I'm gonna bring this up again, but it is so weird that this show has seemingly forgot about the kinslaying taboo. Maybe people thought that Aemond was good and proper before he killed his nephew, but they would definitely not view him like that now. And it remains bonkers that Rhaenyra isn't using this to her advantage. They should be calling him a kinslayer left and right and spreading rumors about him trying to kill his brother. There are other writing decisions that I don't agree with this season, but I can at least track why they made them. This remains completely baffling and erodes the central morality of this society. And the plan works out, the riots start, and it is Helaena and Alicent who face the consequences of Aegon and Aemond's rule. Aegon's unqualified Kingsguard bros don't know how to do their jobs good and don't know how to handle a crowd and set things off in earnest when one of them chops off a man's arm. Can everyone please stop making Helaena leave the castle? Just let her stay in her room with her bugs. Hasn't she been through enough? Alright, so now some miscellaneous things. I am becoming a Maester Orwyle stan. Maester Orwyle is an interesting character to track because he is one of the primary historical sources for the Dance of the Dragons. Maester Orwyle did nothing wrong. My guy is just trying to survive and trying to do his job, and he's very good at it. In this episode, we saw Hugh pet a dog, and a lot of the internet has said that this is Cheese's dog again, but this is clearly a different dog. It has blue eyes. In the trailer for the next episode, we see Aemond on a horse, which just looks strange. I'm wondering if he is riding the horse to get to Vhagar. She has to live somewhere outside of the city limits, so that makes sense that he would ride a horse to get there. And then Vhagar has a snack before they take off. That's so kind of him. Speaking of horse survival, Gwain's fancy horse and its fancy armor survived Rook's Rest, so good for that horse. Hope it survives the next one. Aemond is also being called Your Grace. I am not sure what the standard is for a Prince Regent, but I wonder if he asked people to call him that, the same as Daemon. Alicent and I agree on why Aemond should not be king. He is angry, reckless, and vastly overestimates his own abilities.
Aemond is angry. You have the impetuousness of youth and its arrogance, neither of which is to be desired in a king.
I release you of your seat.
And I feel very validated too in seeing how bad he is at this. Like, so bad. It's so funny that Aemond spent his whole life thinking he was so much better than Aegon and he would be a great king. And now he has the chance to rule and he's doing worse. He ignores his people. He alienates everyone on his small council except Ironrod. And he's the worst one. I will probably have quite a bit to say about Rhaenyra next episode, so I will hold off for now. But for now, I just want to say how much I love her coat. Alright, that is it. Thank you so much if you watched until the end. I was really sick earlier this week. I don't think it was COVID, but I hope my voice sounds as normal as it ever sounds. Next episode should be a cool one. Seems like we're gonna get a bunch of dragon stuff. I feel like I will have more criticisms for this show once the season finishes out. There are some things that I'm just holding off on talking about until I see where they're going. Overall, I have really liked this season quite a bit, but it does have some major flaws. Alright, thank you so much. Bye!